We're all
There
recording.
you go.
Hit the button.
Smash it.
Smash it.
Makes me
sound.
hungry every time.
Well, that's a good sound for today.
I'm salivating.
It is
It's a good one.
perfect. It's almost like we did that on purpose.
Almost like we thought about this.
I think we really nailed it, though.
Sounds awesome. Right. Welcome back to the Okayest Cook podcast. Let's start that again. Welcome back to the Okayest Cook podcast. I'm trying to multitask here. It's not going well. I'm Chris Wansett, your host, and I'm joined today by my three co-hosts, my faithful co-host Sohar. And today I'm introducing them ranked on how squeamish they are.
In
So
what
how-
regard?
Yeah, what are we talking about here?
Medical.
I feel like
type
I'm fine.
situation.
All types, but mostly like processing wild game.
Okay.
So your squeamishness. We've got Andy Heiser, Colton Heidinger, and
right
Corey
in the middle
Cole.
again.
Yeah.
So yeah, which way does this go?
Here's the thing, though, and
We'll,
I don't.
we'll see.
I want to. I feel like I know the order that you did this in, but I want to defend myself a little bit. As
Do you think you're the most squeamish or the least?
I feel like you. I feel like you put me as the most. Only because, but maybe I'm
Why
wrong.
do you
I
think
don't know,
that?
You tell me.
I mean, I would tend to agree with you because you're the least experienced hunter.
Correct. That's what I thought he was going with here. And what I want to defend myself on is that not only did I rack up 4 this year myself for myself and did all 4 myself, but also down in Texas, I was with a group and we had 3 done there. And in addition to mine down there, and I did 4 myself down there as well. And I am a gut machine these days. So
I'd put myself at the bottom of that list.
I mean, I don't
had
know.
some
Colton
situations
admits
this
to be
year
the
that
most
I
squeamy.
will not get into because I don't want to talk about it. But I had some gross situations this year.
Oh, no.
Field processing. So.
Right on.
well, yeah,
And I did that.
had a
And I
situation.
did that pig on
Well,
the back
y-
of a side by side.
Well, Andy, you had a situation with somebody quote unquote helping you this year,
Oh
right?
yeah, yes I did.
Yeah.
No, and
break that down real quick.
Yeah. So
Don't give names,
no, I
but-
won't give names. As Corey mentioned, I am the newest hunter to the group, by a season. So I think Colton's got a season on me, but
Yeah.
so I'm still open to learning, and I love especially when it comes to hunting. I want to be a sponge. I want to hear what everyone else has to see. I want to see everyone's their techniques, how they do everything,
The
from
different opinions and different tactics.
opinions
Yeah.
and all that.
Yeah.
So I had an opportunity to field dress my deer along with someone who I hunt with that also got a deer, and he's been doing that for a number of years, and my whole lifetime for me, an older gentleman. And so I watched him field dress, and he's like, I told him, I was like, hey, I'm open to learning how you do it. So show me what you do. Let me see your way of doing this, because I mean, up to that point, I have learned from you directly, and then just what I've done my whole YouTube dive, right, and learning there too. So seeing this happen with someone else was just gonna be an interesting thing. And boy, oh boy, there are some interesting ways to go about the hind quarter of that process. Can be a little bit weird for some people, and I watched someone who has been doing this for a long time, and that's the thing. Like they talk about, there's a lot of ways to skin a cat. There are a lot of ways to field dress a deer. So
You did not like their method.
did not like that method. That was gross. And I mean, luckily we were near a hose, so
Oh, no.
nothing sat on anything good for any amount of times. But
But it
Man.
got a little messy.
I was like, hey bud, maybe I should show you what I do now.
Dude, my dad's pretty barbaric with it. He's
Oh,
quick.
no.
He's fast.
Yeah.
But 45 plus years of
Yeah.
doing it, I don't know.
Yeah, so I've got some public land, I've got some private land that I hunt, and I share it with another hunter. Going into the situation, I thought like, oh great, like he's gonna be a dick, and like it's not gonna go well. He's like the best guy to share a property with.
right.
Awesome.
One day we showed up at the same day. We discussed it the night before, like we're both gonna hunt this property, and I ended up shooting a little buck and text him. He's like, I'm getting out of my tree stand. Like we're gonna find this thing, and I was like, all right, cool. Like I didn't ask you, but like I'll accept the help.
Yeah.
It was a little bit like it was really close to me. So like I hit him a lot higher than I thought I might have hit him. So the shot wasn't quite as good. So the blood trail was like super sparse, and we eventually found him, and he's like, I gotta go. Actually, I'll just field dress him real quick for you. And I was like, well, okay, sure. And this guy, like legit, was like a field dressing ninja.
Like a surgeon.
It literally took him like 3 minutes. He was just like zip, zoink, and just like the cleanest field dressing I have ever witnessed and the fastest. It was magical.
I'll have to show you the video that I have of my dad doing it.
I would like to see that.
And we're on this year, I mean, we were on a freaking ravine like this.
Oh, geez.
And it worked out
It's like
perfect because it just
slid down the hill.
I was like, I'm just over here.
Nice.
I mean,
Oh,
obviously
man.
I've been hunting since I was 15. But I'm still over here. I mean, I still pull up YouTube videos in the middle of it just because I don't want to mess it up.
Yeah.
And he's just like, done.
That's hilarious.
I'm like, that's 45 years of experience.
Seriously, man.
Hot tip on that note as well. If you are in a nighttime situation where you've found your deer and it's now dark and you're doing field dressing at night, if you get a little squeamish, if that's something that bothers you to do this process, if you have a red light, if your light has a red light, when you put a red light on a deer as you're doing it, you can see everything you're doing and everything is the same color.
Yep.
So
There you go.
it
That's a
really
good tip.
helps with the squeamishness. I actually stumbled upon this as I got my doe down in Texas this year. It was a really awesome shot. I was really excited about it. It was my I did my Indiana deer were bow. This was with a rifle. It was a heck of a shot distance wise. And then by the time I got over there to her, got her drugged back out, we were also hunting hogs, and hog hunting happens a lot at night in Texas. So while I was field dressing, my buddy went back over to the other side of the property, or the driveway really, where we had set up for hogs as well. So he was going over there. So he's like, hey, just, if you can you do that with your red light on? And I was like, sure, I'll try, no big deal. And that was like that's how I stumbled across that idea of just doing it with the red light on. It made it like so easier to like look at because everything was the same color.
Oh, that's a good tip.
Yeah.
So what do you do about the smell, though? Because I feel like
I
that's
can't
what
fix that, buddy.
that's what gets most people. is
Do
the
it
smell.
quickly.
Yeah. Just,
Well, are you able to like mouth breathe?
oh yeah.
I was gonna say I've
If anyone listens to this
Surprisingly-
podcast, they know that I can mouth breathe.
yeah. I've surprisingly enough, some of my other buddies that I hunt with, like they have not figured out like, don't breathe through your nose. It's really that
haven't figured that
simple.
out yet.
Just
That's
breathe through
hilarious.
your mouth.
That also helps. Yes. Let's talk about food.
Yeah.
Let's go straight
Let's get
from
back
field
to-
dressing to
let's get back to the
our
table,
notable
huh?
meals
Let's get back to
here.
the table.
I mean, obviously, as hunters, like all of our meals start this way. So this is not a strange conversation for us. But if you're not a hunter, I apologize for that, and I'm not sorry.
I'm not sorry either.
No.
Yeah. So what'd you guys eat this week?
Gentlemen?
I can jump in here.
Do it.
Okay, go.
Andy inspired me. If y'all
Okay.
listened to last episode, he did a chimichurri. So I also did a chimichurri sauce this week on my steak.
Two episodes ago.
2 episodes ago. Sorry.
Jeez.
Yeah, time flies. man.
Colton's got a baby.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I tried 2 different chimichurri recipes and they turned out. I've never had chimichurri before. Fun fact.
Really?
Never had
I didn't
it
know that.
on anything.
I've not made it
so-
myself either.
So
Have you had it though?
I've had it. Yeah,
I've had it. I've
made
never
yeah.
made it.
I have.
I'm gonna try now though.
I didn't even know what it is until Andy started talking about it.
Oh
So
man.
yeah, but
Shout out to Dan Shunk. I know no one. This is Frank's friend. So back to my brother-in-law Frank, who I often mention on this podcast. His best friend Dan is a chimichurri master. But that's
Okay,
But yeah, go.
okay.
But yes, but continue, please.
Yeah, so that turned out great. But then I also cooked my steak on my just Weber charcoal grill, and it was the best steak I've ever cooked.
Nice.
I let
Yeah,
it.
dude.
Well, actually, I won't get too deep into how I cooked it, but I threw some cherry wood on the coals to get a little cherry smoke in there while I cooked it, and it
Perfect,
turned
perfect.
out phenomenally. So
Yeah.
I had to do that on the steak week. So
Nice.
Yes, absolutely good. It's hard to beat charcoal, and I'll bring that up later on. But
It's funny.
What's yours?
Mine is also a steak.
Nice.
Corey's showing a picture of his steaks
Of
for
my
anybody watching.
steaks,
Yes.
yeah.
Or not
So-
watching.
Not
I guess.
watching.
And I use I have the cowboy mix charcoal, so it's like
I don't know what is that.
it's like half wood, petrified wood,
Ah, okay, and half charcoal. Okay,
Nice.
that's cool.
And I just have a really small grill. I mean, you can see I have 3 ribeyes on there, and it's taking up the whole thing. I have a really nice gas grill. I just don't like using it. There's just
different.
nothing beats the charcoal. But I threw
very
some
different.
apple wood chips in
Okay,
there at the
okay.
end.
That's
So-
huge. Absolutely huge. Yes.
Well, yeah, I was saying like I didn't really cook anything notable this time around, other than the chimichurri from a while ago. But again, basics. Going back to the ground. Like this was a basic week for me, so nothing fun to report. I apologize.
Hey, we've all been there. Yes. Dude, I had like an awesome side dish the other day. We had our neighbors over and they cooked Brussels sprouts for us, which I love, like roasted Brussels sprouts, but they diced them. Like they took the Brussels sprouts, like they didn't roast them whole, they diced them up. And it was almost like a shredded, roasted Brussels sprout salad. And it was good.
I
That
don't know how
sounds
I feel
good.
about this.
It was
So,
good.
well, here's the thing. My favorite part about Brussels sprouts are like the little like charred pieces.
Oh, yeah.
that
Oh,
are
yeah.
like
So much more of
assume
that.
you'd have more of that.
So much more of that.
All right. I'm in.
Yeah, it's crispy. Like growing up, like we despised Brussels sprouts because we steamed them.
Yeah.
That's
Whoa.
gross.
Like,
Yeah.
well, it's nasty. Roasted vegetables, yeah, it's to die for. But
So
like
they diced it and then roasted it.
roasted.
Because
So good.
again, going right back to the cast iron skillet,
perfect.
My thought was like maybe I dice these things and just like roast them in the cast iron.
Yeah, try that.
Well, you got to do your
So good.
you got to do your water bath on them first.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of people don't do that, and it changes the flavor.
Mm-hmm. Well, that and they
Tell me
they
about
burn,
this real
They
quick.
burn up.
It's like basically like what is it, like 7 minutes? I think is what they.
well, I
Boil
don't.
them?
We'll roast them longer, and we'll put them in the water longer. Than that.
Water, yeah, water. It's
45
basically a
minutes.
water bath, like almost where it's like right at like boiling level, not so it's like
Really?
crazy boiling. It's just like right at that.
What does it
level.
do?
Like
So I've never done this.
I would assume maybe the pH level. They're not as acidic.
Well, it would tenderize it. Number one.
Tenderize,
right?
yes, but they're not. I feel like they don't.
Okay.
Like they almost have that bitterness. It does.
Okay,
It's
yeah.
not quite as bitter.
Takes that away.
And then you roast them.
Do they still get crispy?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, so you water bath them. I guess you call that a poach or like
Yeah.
a
See,
braise.
we do them a little differently. Like I've heard of soaking them. That's what I thought you were talking about. So we'll soak them in water for, I mean, sometimes for 45 minutes or whatever. Just like just absorb a lot of water first.
Okay,
and
we're
then roast them.
we're gonna have to do an episode on side dishes
Yeah.
next,
Yes.
because we're getting way off topic here. This is supposed to be about steaks.
Let's get back to steak.
We'll go back to steaks, but phenomenal. I love the Brussels sprout. Like
Yeah.
the soaking. Like I've never tried that, and I will. Yeah, so we have some. I'm going to introduce a new, what was it category? A new topic, a new talking point here. We've got some corrections/research.
Okay.
This is going to be the portion of the podcast where we introduce, corrections and research. Last episode, chili episode, we talked about the browned bits in the pan.
Mm-hmm.
And I mentioned there is a word for that, but I couldn't recall it. That word is fond. The word for brown bits is fond.
I've
FOND.
never heard of this word before.
It's a name.
As a fellow marketer in the group, I'm gonna have to just veto this and just call it brown bits, buddy, because that's so much more fun.
It's not fancy, though.
No, no,
It's not
it's not
fancy.
fancy though.
You and your fancy words.
It's kind of it's kind of above and beyond most OKS cooks, but for
Fond,
those
like spell it for me.
FOND.
Okay, fond.
FOND, fond. Yes. Brown bits.
I'm very fond
fond.
of brown bits.
You got it.
Correct.
You got it. We also have some exciting news related to the butchering of animals. I've kind of got this episode all out of order here, but we've got our first partner, and Outdoor Edge is currently working with us. And they have given us a really cool 20% off discount
What?
to all their website stuff.
Okay.
So if you use OKC20, it'll be down in the show notes. It'll be on our Instagram, I'm assuming. But 20% off Outdoor Edge. They honestly are like my go-to knife, like for taking into the field. They're affordable. They're everywhere. They're phenomenal knives. They've got this one. Oh gosh, what's it called? I need to look up the pack. I've done terrible research here. Who's the producer? Their gutting blade. Like it's not a traditional like a gut hook, but it's like a, I don't even know what
I
you
think I
call
have
it.
this set. I'm like,
It's I'm looking it up right now.
I know that my kit is for Outdoor Edge.
So my uncle gave me the swing blade when I first started hunting. We'll put it up on the screen for YouTube. But yeah, if you just go to outdooredge.com and look up their swing blade, it's like half buck knife, half this crazy
That's the one I use.
weird. It's just like a,
You're talking about this one.
it's a concave knife, that you gut with, and it is
got a like a nub at the top.
phenomenal. Like,
Uh-huh.
zero gut pinching. Like you won't nick anything accidentally. It's impossible to nick something accidentally. It's also phenomenal for like skinning the shanks, like getting that skin and hair off the shanks, which is notoriously kind of tricky. This blade just like zzz, like clean as a whistle, like
I could have used that
100%.
last year.
We
100%
did
highly
use
recommend
this
it.
when you came over to help me with mine to get it up in the shed. This is the blade. You actually used it to do down the legs, down the rear legs. So you just don't even remember it, but you
I had a
did.
baby since then,
That's true.
so.
You did have a baby since then.
I've used other blades like because I've forgotten this at home, and like I've hated it myself. Like it really stinks using anything but this knife. So yeah, go to outdooredge.com, use code OKC20 for 20% off. That's huge. Buy the swing blade or what is the Jaeger pair, Jaeger pair.
That's the one I have. That's the set I have. Those two.
It's a kit. So the swing blade is like a 2-in-1 kind of knife, and the Jaeger pair is like a two different blades. But 100% would buy either of those, and I probably will because I'll probably lose the swing blade at some point, and I need to back up. Yeah, so huge news there.
Yeah,
Super
we
thankful to get
appreciate
Outdoor
the
Edge
guys over at
jumping in with
Outdoor
us.
Edge.
They believe in what we do. I've been helping them out with some Wild Game Wednesday cooking stuff for a little bit now, and yeah, I love the product. I use it every time I'm in the woods, and super cool company. Definitely check out their Wild Game Wednesday feed if you're not on their newsletter. Like jump on that, check it out. I actually submitted like some steak cook-off, and I did like steak and eggs, but I did steak 3 ways, and we can discuss this later on here. But like I did it on the charcoal, I did it on the gas. No, wait, what did I do? I didn't do gas. I did charcoal, I did cast iron, and I did sous vide. And you'll have to look at my post for my thoughts on how all 3 of those turned out. Spoiler alert, I did cook the sous vide steak a little too long. So it did get a little too tender. But yeah, take a peek at that article. Tell me what you think, but it's really hard to beat charcoal. I need to redo that whole comparison thing because I've since purchased a smoker. I've got a Traeger now, and like just the other day smoked like a phenomenal steak. And that's, to me, like it's either, in my mind, it's sous vide or smoker at this point.
Right.
That's what I prefer.
I hear you on the sous vide. I've been doing that for years. Yeah. I'm a huge fan. That's how most restaurants get steaks to where they can just finish them the way you want it. But phenomenal tool there. I'm sure we'll talk about it here in a bit.
Yeah. It's hard to beat sous vide. But yeah, for flavor, I would say, rock the smoker, rock the charcoal. That's my personal opinion there. We're kind of off track here a little bit.
Yeah.
I don't know
back
where
to-
we're gonna go from here.
Let's go back to preparation. Let's talk a little about, because the room temperature thing got me thinking about thawing. When you're talking about thawing your meats, this is actually, it came from a couple weeks ago. I did a roast, and this is kind of in line with what we talked about too, with just properly thawing your meats out and bringing things to room temperature before you cook them. Too many people think that you can just take a steak out of the fridge and just put it directly to the grill. And yeah, I mean, you can technically, that will cook it still. It will still cook. But man, I would challenge you to do that, and then also let one sit on the counter for 30 minutes and come back up to room temperature and then cook that there. And I'll promise you, you will be so surprised the difference in texture and the difference in tenderness of the steak itself.
Oh, yeah.
So I know that was kind of the first part about winter preparation is that thawing process, and just giving some time to think. And I think in Hank Shaw's book, he talked about it. Like, I thought it was actually kind of silly. I was like, you want this thing to sit on the counter for a half an hour?
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean,
Makes a difference.
it makes a huge difference. And we talked about this on a lot of our episodes too, just about patience inside of like a lot of time cooking is about what you're not doing, not what you're actually doing, and giving yourself some time to prepare properly for it. But that thaw is extremely important, especially, I mean, think about it, guys, like the steaks that Corey sent, and I'm sure they'll probably be on our Instagram at some point if they're not already. But man, oh man, you're going to spend that kind of money on a beautiful piece of meat and take it and then just ruin it in that last little bit.
Yeah.
Like, pay the respect, do it the right way. Let it, I promise you won't be upset about it.
Yeah.
Well, that's something I just started doing recently that I hadn't done before, and it completely has changed. Specifically, my beef steaks, because we could talk about the steaks of a lot of different types of protein, but with beef, because of how fatty it is, I've noticed the fat renders a lot better.
Oh yeah.
When you let
When
it
it's warm.
sit. Yeah,
Yep.
exactly.
I'd say, and then on the back side of that is letting it rest.
At
That's
the end.
what people don't.
Oh, yeah.
So many people miss that, and it makes a difference. When
Well,
you just let
it's
it
in
rest.
who's on our notes here. I think Corey. We just said
Yeah.
it right there. Yeah, like that is the last. Man, oh man, the 5 to 10 minutes at the end. Don't rush in that first cut. Let it sit there and reabsorb. If you took a steak off a grill and put it right on a plate and just let it sit there for a minute, you'll see it, the juices that come out, and like they'll reabsorb, and that meat will be so much better. So
It's
getting way
hard.
off
I know
track.
it's hard. Like, you want to eat it. It smells good. It
Yeah.
looks good. It's tasty.
Well,
Walk
and I
away.
think when I think a lot of people are, it's going to get cold. Not if you cover it.
Right.
A little foil.
A little foil,
Shoot a towel. Just a kitchen towel, like paper towel.
or throw it. Throw it in your microwave.
Yeah.
Just let it sit there. Don't turn it on. Just throw it in there and let
In
it
the
sit
oven.
so that that heat is capturing around it still. Yeah, it makes a big difference.
Absolutely, yeah. So what? We're kind of bouncing around here a little bit. So preparation, yeah, super critical. Yeah, don't thaw it out too quick, right? Obviously. How long are you guys like letting your meat once it's thawed? Are you cooking it straight away? Are you letting it sit in your fridge a little bit? Like what's the process there?
Yeah. Go ahead.
I mean,
Corey's shaking his head. So
mine easily sits out for at least 30 minutes at minimum.
I'm
I
thinking
go,
like how many days?
well,
like, are you,
yeah,
like,
once it so
Dry aging it,
I-
quote
no,
unquote, in the fridge? Or?
I'll probably grab if I'm gonna cook a steak on say a Saturday. I'll throw it in there. I'll thaw it out on like Tuesday or Wednesday.
So you're letting it like dry out in the fridge for a little bit.
Yeah, and I think also that kind of depends on if I'm gonna marinate it or not. I tend to not to, especially with my beef steaks. But if I'm going to, I probably get it out maybe a day earlier, so I can do it.
I
so
honestly
can do a
cannot remember the
24-hour
last
marinade.
time I marinated a steak.
I don't marinate steaks.
Mostly because I'm lazy and I forget about it.
I just don't see if I don't know if this might be, I have a couple unpopular opinions about steak in general, but I don't know if if the flavor difference between it, in my opinion, has not been worth the additional work of the marinade personally. Now, if you're doing a piece of meat that's got a certain type of flavor because it's going into it, you're going to cut it up and it's going to go into something else or in a dish. Like, I get it. I get that. That's what I'm talking about. But if I'm going to have a ribeye, which again, unpopular opinion, I don't like ribeyes. I like strip steaks. I think there's too much marbling in it. It's a lot of fat. I feel like sluggish afterwards. I'm not a fan. I know a lot of people love ribeyes. They look beautiful. I love the idea of.
They look good.
Yeah, but I like the strip steak better. But so for me, marinade is just it's just not worth the time, in my opinion.
I think, and I
Maybe
think
I'm
it
wrong.
depends on the marinade. Maybe I can give you a couple marinades
Yeah,
that you can try.
I'll try them. Yeah.
So I've got I have a red wine marinade.
Ooh.
I have a olive oil marinade. I've heard of people doing vinegar. I've never done that before, but I'm
Scares me a little bit to hear about it.
Scares me with the bitterness.
Well, that and then, I mean,
Like,
this is why I'm not a scientist, but I feel like if we're starting to get into like acids and like vinegar
Yeah.
and lime, like you're starting
Yeah.
to cook with acid at that point a
Yeah.
little bit in your
Well,
marinade process.
well, and that's I would assume that would probably be like a 20 or 30 minute before.
that's fair.
marinade,
Yeah,
probably.
that's not a
Whereas
3-day.
like when I do like an olive oil marinade, it's that marinade probably goes on Friday if I'm cooking it on Saturday.
Yeah, 24 hours.
Yeah, I tend to put all my meat in the refrigerator on, let's say, a Friday, so that it's thawed by Monday, and then I just plan on eating it at some point that week. So my biggest thing with how long I let it sit in the fridge is not from an aging perspective. It's more how long does it take to dry out the meat, because number one thing for me is just putting it on a paper towel and just making sure it's dry, getting all the moisture
that's a
off
big
the
thing.
off the outside.
We'll
So-
talk a little bit more about that because I think that this is a thing that people don't realize what's happening when you buy a piece of when you buy a steak and there's that pad underneath that weird piece of meat that you're like, what is this for? And it's pulling moisture out is what it's doing, folks. So for those of us who butcher on meat, we don't have those. We don't put those in. You're gonna when you take it out of the thaw, it's gonna be very wet in general. So talk a little bit more like the importance of why, or I guess the difference between cooking a wet piece of meat versus a dry piece of meat.
Yeah, so this kind of gets into an episode we did previously with steaming versus searing your meat. So the biggest thing with taking the moisture out is just getting that good sear. If you still have moisture on your meat, you're not going to get that good crust. You're not going to get a good sear, and therefore a lot less flavor, in my opinion. And I found,
opinion.
well,
It's fact.
Yeah.
steak is one thing. I mean, it's just as important, but I think number one, a lot of people do not get a good sear on their fish because they're not doing this, and that has been.
At the very least, people pat it dry. If
Yes.
if you're not letting it sit in your fridge, with a piece of paper towel underneath it, at least pat it dry.
Yeah. And that's where, I mean, honestly, I've noticed the biggest difference with fish specifically, because fish is something you can pat dry and it's still got a lot of moisture in it. Steak, you can get away with that sometimes, depending on, how long it's been in there. But
Yeah, buy those trays that I
Yeah.
talked about in the gear episode.
Chris has
Gear
some
episode.
awesome
Yeah,
trays.
the trays.
You did a dry age recently, didn't you? Last year?
I forget when. Yeah, my kids are destroying my brain, but I do like to age, in the fridge for like a week or so.
So I guess for me, because I've never really aged any meat, tell me how does that process even work? And why is it okay and it not being like a bad thing for the meat? You're not letting it go bad. It's aging. How is aging different than
I can't speak to the science behind it. So I'm a photographer. One of my clients is a butcher, and they sell to some high-end steak places,
Right.
and they do properly aged meat, and it is phenomenal. It's got this tang. I don't know what to call this flavor. It's like
I
a
think
zip,
I
it's
think
a
the tang. I think tang is a good
It's-
description.
a little off-putting to some people, but I'm in love with this.
So it's
and
a different flavor profile. is what
It
you gain from
100%.
it. Okay.
100% different. Yeah, and I do want to say it is probably part of the spoiling process, the extreme start. Of
We're
that.
taking it to the edge
You're
of
getting it right at the edge.
To do it properly, it's got to be in a well ventilated area. Air's got to be circulating around it. It's got to be 40 degrees, real cold, maybe even sub 40, but not freezing. So keep it super cold, keep it dry. Like Colton mentioned, you don't want
This is
any
why you
moisture.
hung. If I remember correctly, you hung it in your fridge.
I do that when I break down my deer. Yeah, initially. Yeah. So I hang my quarters for a week. sometimes
But
14 days.
But
that-
you are correct. A lot of people
Yeah,
will hang it.
you can hang it,
Correct.
mhm.
Yep.
Yep. Again, you just want that air circulating around it. You don't
Right.
want it
So
sitting
it's
on
not
something.
sitting on something.
Because
Yeah.
that's where bad stuff happens. Like the bacteria, like
Yeah.
it loves that sitting in its own juices.
It loves to
and-
touch.
I need to get
It's
some.
gross.
Probably need to do a picture of when I do my aging,
Yeah.
because I do a herb butter
Ooh.
casing around it, and
Now
let
that's
that
almost
and let that harden.
like almost a wet age.
It's a wet
at that
age.
point. Yeah.
I
Okay.
I like wet aging
Yeah.
a little bit better, but so you just literally get enough butter that you just coat the thing that's completely encased in it, and when it hardens up, and then you tie it up.
Yeah, I've seen people do that with wax and stuff.
Yeah, I've
It
seen a
looks
lot of people do
crazy,
the
like
wax,
some salt.
but- yeah,
salt
Well,
bricks
and they typically that's a wet age for that.
Mhm.
Like they're doing a couple weeks,
Yeah.
or whatever. This is just I might do it for like 3 or 4 days,
Yeah.
but then all of your stuff is right there, and then
Yeah.
you're just tossing it in. And
Yeah.
it's ready to go.
It's so I will admit, like, my aging, like, it's more of like a tenderness kind of thing. Like, it
Okay.
100% like makes it way more tender. I think once or twice, like, I've somehow gotten that tangy zip into my deer steaks, and I don't want to say that I'm doing it correctly, like being just in my normal refrigerator.
Right.
There is an element of risk if you don't do this 100% correctly.
Definitely do your research.
do
for
your
sure.
research 100%.
Do your research.
But I will say, like, that zip is worth it. Like,
Well, yeah, and not just the taste too. The meat's more tender.
Oh, yeah.
And I can speak on the science of that unless you want to. Yeah, so
Go science guy.
it's the I don't know about science guy, but it's how my brain
Let's
works.
put the coats on. Let's go.
I like researching things, but so it's the same process of when you're hanging a deer and aging your deer for a week before you process. It's when meat is frozen, nothing is breaking down. When you thaw your meat and let it sit in the fridge, as soon as it's thawed, it starts that breakdown process. So as you let your meat sit in the fridge, I can't speak to how long it becomes unsafe, but at least a week, right? We know it's still safe at that point, and that collagen in the meat actually starts to break down once it's been in there for
Yeah.
a week, and that's why the meat is a lot more tender.
yeah, and it's delicious, so much better.
Right on.
Yeah, but also at the same time, you're kind of like intensifying flavors. So like as that meat sits, it's like actively drying out. So if you do let it sit for too long, like if you like go more than 7 days in your fridge, like it's gonna turn kind of crusty on you. So you might have this rind that you need to cut off. And it's not necessarily a bad thing. You are losing, quote unquote, some meat mass due to moisture loss. But it's not like the moisture you're losing, like you're literally just losing water from evaporation. So like you're just intensifying flavors.
Yeah.
So-
I think the Bearded Butcher brothers have a really good.
Oh, I
video
bet they
on
do.
it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
phenomenal.
And that's why the ventilation is important. Otherwise,
yeah.
you just get a lot of moisture under your saran wrap. I've done that before.
Yes.
On accident, so.
Yes, it will like linger in your fridge and do bad things.
And
if it's
that's where
not-
you get some of those funky flavors. So.
Yeah, maybe the bad funk, if that happens to you. But I highly recommend giving it a go. Like if you've never aged steak, like it's game changing.
It
takes,
is, and
takes some time.
I would say, just even in the research that I've done, wet aging is a little bit easier, a little bit less risky. If you're trying it out,
Yeah.
you do need a crap ton of butter. You need
Yeah.
a lot of butter,
I've
depending on the
never
size of the
I
cut.
haven't gotten into the wet aging yet, but I would like to. And if I think about it, like next time I do some processing, like probably next season, when I vac seal my steaks,
Ooh,
I might
yeah.
just like throw in some salt, like right off the bat. Maybe some herbs or something. Like I'll do some research on the wet aging, but like I want to like vac seal all this stuff together, and I'm going to freeze it. That way, when I thaw it out, like on the vac bag, like I'm going to
So-
write down my recipe, so I know
Right.
like, hey, this is already like ready to go. It's ready to.
It's ready to go. So here's what I was.
Well, it's ready to wet age. So I'm going to thaw it out.
Okay.
I'm going to let it sit in my fridge inside the vac bag. Like I'm not going to break that seal, but it's going to thaw. Like Colton said, it's going to break down a little bit because it's thawed. It's got the salt in there. It's got the herbs or whatever. I haven't figured that recipe out yet, but
That'd be
gonna
very
be doing it.
interesting.
I'm going to attempt it. Yeah, we'll see. Yeah,
I have
wet
never
aging.
aged anything outside of just leaving something in my fridge too long. So.
Well, that's aging. That's exactly what it is.
That's aging.
How'd you feel after you ate it?
It was only a week, so it's fine.
It's fine.
It didn't have any green or black mold growing on it. You're good to go. Yes. So on that salting note, do you guys have preferences on when you like to season things? I know, like when you do like a pulled pork. Well, when Andy does a pulled
Anybody
pork,
but me, yeah.
like they tell you to, like, yeah, you put your binder on, you put your seasoning on, and just let it sit for like half an hour.
So I'm a big fan, again, as we've talked about before. I pull my meat out on Thursdays typically, and I do a lot of cooking on
To thaw,
Sundays
right?
to thaw. So I cook it on Sundays. So usually, what I like to do for the steaks is Sunday morning prior to going to the store, I'll pull the meat out, make sure everything's dry, pad to dry again, and then season the steaks that I'm going to cook for later that day. So I'd say they sit on there for anywhere minimum hour or so for me, but I think you can get away with at least 20, 30 minutes or so would probably be fine. The longer you put it on there, I feel like it sticks better on the meat.
I'd say so.
But again, I'm a big fan of hot and fast on the cast iron skillet for steaks or the sous vide route. So in that instance that I just described there, that's going straight on a cast iron, a real hot.
Yeah.
Fast and hot, and then pulling that bad boy off. And because it's sat in there, I think a little bit more, it doesn't, you get some more of the flavor in there, because a lot of the seasonings I like to use has a lot of, typically there's some sugars in there too, and those caramelize and thus burn into the steak pretty well. But yeah, so for me, I mean, I think you can get 30 minutes minimum if you're going to do it. Otherwise, you might as well just season it beforehand. But again, that's 30 minutes before you pull it out, before it sits on the counter.
Yeah.
Right.
So as we talked about earlier.
Yeah. So coming to room temp with all but seasoning on.
Already on
it. Yeah.
See, I need to get better at that, because I don't think of these things.
I
in
would say,
time.
look, like going
And I
back to
forget.
the ethos of all this, okayist wise, like, look, you can pull your meat out and season it, and if you let it sit on the counter and seasoned while it comes to room temperature, you're going to have some phenomenal flavor profile too. But this is what we're talking about. If you want the difference between
Taking it up a notch.
right, if you're looking to take it up a notch, it's going to come with preparation,
Yeah.
and a little bit of patience.
And I'd say, for me, it's not going overboard. Steaks don't need a lot, in my opinion.
Right.
Oh, true.
Salt,
Steaks
pepper.
just don't need a lot. You can really overdo it, and you can really create a bad profile for it, especially when it comes to, salts, any type of salts, garlic salts, onion salts, whatever. It can really change for the bad. It doesn't take. I'm big, just butters, maybe some garlic and some salt.
Yeah, salt,
Yeah.
pepper, and I mean, if you want to get if you want to try to throw some additional flavor in there, rosemary will go a long way.
Yep.
Just one little sprig of it. I don't know what is so magical about that, but man, just like, especially if you have time to put it, like season it and then let it sit in the fridge for 30 minutes. Throw some rosemary on that bad boy.
Oh, yeah.
Oh man.
If nothing else, just the smell of the rosemary
Yeah.
Oh,
as you're
for
cooking.
sure.
it.
And I go back and forth
Huge.
between actually sticking the rosemary into the steak or just having it sit on top.
Yeah, I basically just lay mine on top, and then like when I cook it, I like to cook it with it underneath, underneath the actual steak while it cooks, and then we flip it back over. I'll just let it usually hang on top, and then it's pretty for presentation
Yep.
too.
Well, if you've got the rosemary on top of your steak as it's cooking, like you're basting it with the butter, maybe
Yep.
like all that oil from the rosemary is just like
All in it.
almost like melting off and getting on your steak.
And that really should be your last step anyway.
Right.
Like that basting is your last kind of 30 seconds, minute or so of kind of getting the pan off the heat and basting it.
So I love this conversation. I will admit that I'm not a big fan of using a cast iron for steak.
Why?
I don't know.
Defend yourself.
Kind of going back to the start of the podcast, it's just like the charcoal, I think, just tastes way better.
You can't beat that.
Can't beat that.
But
Yeah.
The smoke from the smoker, like I can't beat that.
Yeah, okay.
I will admit, if I'm sous videing, like I'll probably throw it on the cast iron. But like if I'm cooking a steak, like from start to finish on the cast iron, like I've just never been happy with it. I haven't figured that out. Like there's a precise temperature that I need to hit, and it's just, I don't know.
hot and fast.
Hot
and fast.
Well,
I tried that and it was like raw inside and perfect on the outside.
Correct.
So it's a
still-
little too hot.
I want to see that thing. If it's beef, I want to hear it moo. If it's a deer, I want to see it run away.
I
don't like
agree
it
with
quite
you.
that way.
I like charcoal the best, but it's also trickier. The cast iron finished in the oven, I can get it the
Yes.
exact temperature
Yeah.
every
Right.
single
Yeah.
time.
So that is
I've
actually,
not tried the oven.
Yeah, so
I'm like 100% stovetop cast iron.
Yeah.
So maybe that's my
Okay.
problem.
yeah, get your crust and then throw it in the oven.
So that's
Okay,
one of
okay.
my notes for this episode was that this is something I've not done yet, and so I was going to ask you guys for some thoughts and considerations on how to do this well. I want to get the crust and actually finish in the oven. I've never finished a steak in the oven, but especially if you get anything with any sort of girth to it as far as thickness of the steak, you need like that's. I feel like how else
Yeah,
do you cook it all the way through on hot and fast? Like that's
Right.
how you back to your point about why yours was maybe raw
Yeah.
on the inside. Maybe that's just stick that bad boy in the cast
Stick
iron.
it
Now,
in
do you
the
guys use the same cast iron, or how does that
Yeah.
work?
Do you?
Oh, yeah.
So, I guess my question be because I may be different. Do you pull your steak off the cast iron before you?
No.
See, I pull my steak off, and after I pull the cast iron off the heat for a few minutes, and then throw it back in.
So,
Oh, wait. So,
I
sorry, the steak stays in the pan, but you take the pan off
No,
the heat?
I pull my steak off the pan,
Okay.
Okay.
put it on a cutting board, let it rest for a minute, and then pull the cast iron off the heat
Yeah.
for a few minutes just to let it
Come down from being
come down from being
I
so
gotcha.
hot, and then throw it back in and then throw it in the oven.
Oh, okay.
But there's honestly you can't do it wrong.
yeah, you can. I understand why you do that. I just adjusted my method to account for that. So, for those of you listening, if you sear your steak on a very hot cast iron, both sides for a set amount of time, and then throw it in the oven, you're going to get one side that's extremely unevenly cooked.
Yeah.
So what I do instead, I generally will do 2 to 3 minutes per side, but then once I flip it, after about 30 seconds to a minute, I throw it straight in the oven from there.
Okay, so you're letting it finish essentially in
yeah,
the oven
exactly.
so that it's even.
And then it's
Gotcha.
not overcooking on
Okay.
that one side.
right. That
So
makes sense.
So you do 2 to 3 minutes for one side.
One side,
30
flip
seconds
it.
on the other. Put it in the
Because that pan will still be like
Hot,
ripping
yeah.
hot for a little bit in the oven. So you'll still get that good sear on both
That's
sides.
just my way of avoiding that.
Yeah,
Got it.
Yeah.
Is I just pull it off for a few minutes
Yeah.
and let the
Okay.
pan come down. So yeah.
I'm gonna have to get a go. Like I said, I've obviously with venison steaks, they're not usually back straps. I cut my back straps a little thinner, so they're not usually, so I get more of them. They're not usually thick enough to be able to like warrant all of that.
Yeah.
But for a
Definitely
ribeye or a
beef.
big
Yeah.
beef strip steak, that would be a good idea.
I do. I have to agree with Chris though. I prefer the charcoal grill. I mean, if I'm going to do it, but I love the good old cast iron and finishing in the oven. That's probably a top. Like it's probably even
Yeah.
for me, for sure.
Well, back. I know in previous episodes that we've discussed my inability to think about multiple things at the same time. I cannot multitask, and I think what I love about the smoker, the sous vide, is like it takes so long to cook your steak. Like I can put it on the smoker and I can do like a side dish, and I don't have to worry about screwing it up. Whereas if I've got my steak on the cast iron, like I need to be standing there watching it. I cannot move anywhere else until that thing's done.
That's fair. And the sous vide is the way, like that thing. I mean, I don't know how many of. I feel like Innova should be sponsored by them at this point. For the amount of people
I would talk to Innova.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I would. Man, if you don't have one of these things, guys, it's just what a great, especially for families. Like what a great way to produce a lot of food. Have it ready whenever you need it to be ready, especially if you're entertaining guests. It's a phenomenal way to bring whatever it is, whether it's I mean, we've talked about this, everything from soup to
Well, Andy, let me cut you off here
yeah,
for a second because
yeah.
some people may be listening. I just learned what a sous vide is.
all right, so I'll
Yeah.
back up.
Last
Yeah,
year,
let me back up. So a sous vide is it's a, as you can probably imagine by the way that you'll look this up and you'll see it spelled, it is a French, I believe, tool. But essentially what you're doing is you're taking a pot of water and you're bringing it up to a specific temperature. and that water is circulating through an oscillating like device that sits inside of the pot, right? Now, there's companies out there that have these things that hook up to their own like big drums, big things that you can do that, but you can literally do this on a pot, on a stovetop, anywhere. But the thing goes inside of the water, hooks to the side, and then brings it up to a certain temperature. Then what you do is you take typically we'll say, because we're talking about steaks, we'll talk about steak. You would take a piece of meat and you would either vacuum seal it with a vacuum sealer, or there's ways to utilize the water to actually pull all the air out. But what you want is a airtight meat inside of this plastic bag of some sort, right? Yeah. And essentially what you do is you'll stick that bag into the water, and it'll cook, and it'll bring it up to whatever temperature that sous vide is set at. So typically for steak, I think I have to go look at it, but I think I set mine at like 145, I believe.
145.
Or wait, no, I think it's 145.
That seems
That's pretty
like a
warm.
high
It's
temp.
really, it's a lot lower than you think. It's a lot lower than, I actually pull up there.
145 is not low.
130 would be my guess.
Hold on.
I set mine to
I might be
130.
thinking about my chicken, because I mean, I literally cook so much in this thing. Let's see what my steak recipe is here on the old phone here. But you bring it up to, either way, you bring it up to an actual temperature. 130.
Your desired temperature of
Your desired
doneness.
temperature of doneness. And so what most people will do, especially if you're cooking steaks for several different people who have several different feelings about how done a piece of meat should be, you can, if you, for instance, in this recipe here, if you set it for 130 and you have it in the sous vide for a minimum of 2 hours, that steak will come out at medium rare. Now,
Like it comes out literally at 130. Like whatever you
literally-
set the sous vide stick to, like that
That
the
is
temperature
what
you
the
meat will
temperature
be.
your
It will
meat
not
will
be
be.
over that.
Not be over it.
If it's in there long enough, it will not be under that.
Correct.
Yeah.
And then for 2 hours in this recipe specifically. Here.
Minimum 2 hours.
Minimum 2 hours.
And that's Anova's website.
But that's, yes, and at that point though, if you, let's say you get it's been in there for 2 hours, but your guys aren't ready to eat yet, fine, let it run. Now, as Chris has admitted to on his previous encounter with this, you can actually leave it in there too long, but for the most part, you have yourself a nice little window there when you're ready to make your steaks, and then at that point you can pull them out. And if somebody is a barbarian and they want their steak, completely well done, you can take that thing out and finish it on the cast iron skillet or on a grill for as long as you want. A lot of times people will take these out at rare and finish them on a smoker.
Well, because you need to finish them.
Because you need to finish them. Because when you
Okay,
pull them out,
you still got to
yes.
finish it. Okay.
So, because here's the thing:
'Cause it
technically,
looks
you
nasty.
could take it out and eat it right there, but I promise you won't want to, because it will look gray.
Won't have
It's-
that crust. either.
No, it
Yeah,
doesn't
no
have the
crust.
crust. Because again,
Yeah.
at this point, it hasn't come out. Now, back to what Chris was saying before, what people start to do get fancy is they'll vacuum seal that piece of meat in with the butter, the seasoning, the rosemary, and they'll let that thing marinate for that 2 hours in that 130 degree temperature water, and then boy, oh boy.
You've posted about that. You've done that, right?
It
Yeah,
is.
that's
It
what
is
you
done
do.
that a lot.
Yeah.
Game changer. Now you take that out and finish it on a cast iron, finish it on a smoker, finish it on however you charcoal, whatever you want to do.
What's the price point of something like that?
I mean, there was $100.
100,
Yeah.
130.
Okay.
Let me pop on the old Amazon machine here.
I need to
There's
give it
fan-
another try because my couple experiences have not turned out well. I think I vacuum sealed too many things in there with the steak. Like you said, 1 sprig of rosemary. I think I put like 3 in there,
Oh, my.
and it came out just like
Oh my
tasting
gosh.
like the
That's,
woods.
yeah, that's a lot of
So the
rosemary.
one, the one that I have, and it's got an app, so you can monitor it from your app. You can set it for a certain amount of time, that sort of thing. Is $101 on the old Amazon machine. Now I also went a little fancy with the big old tub. Got a big old plastic tub thing that it comes with that it hooks onto.
Pretty slick.
But what I love about that thing is I can load that thing up.
Load it up.
I mean, we can.
So you essentially have to have that, and then you have to have a vacuum sealer.
Or you can technically seal.
There's
with
other ways to
water.
do it.
You can seal. With
You don't
water.
need a vac sealer,
Okay.
but
Yeah.
it's,
It makes
it's a little bit
things-
safer.
Yeah.
So I can take my Ziploc with the
Oh, yeah.
with the vacuum and
100%.
be good.
Use water, like put it in the water and
Yeah.
get
Yeah.
all the air out and
Google
Ziploc
it.
Yeah.
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 Huge, yeah, I mean,
YouTube.
like I said, the best thing about sous vide, like Andy mentioned, is just like it takes your window of doneness. Like if you're on a grill, like you might have 15, 30 seconds. Like when it's medium rare, like you
Yeah.
got to pull it
You
off.
You got to pull it off. Yep.
With the sous vide, your window of doneness is like an hour,
That's
2 hours. So it's like, yeah, if your side dish isn't ready, or if your kids are
that
doing something and not
very,
at the table,
seems like it'd be very helpful with large groups of people.
yeah.
and with large
hosting.
like pieces of meat
Yeah.
or large quantities of things, it just holds it a lot longer.
Yeah, I like that.
Sandy. It's a different way to cook things. So like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, if you've got some disposable income, yeah, buy one, try it out. If your buddy has one, borrow it.
Borrow it.
It's so much
Borrow
fun.
it.
Yeah,
Andy,
love it.
I may
Sounds
need
like
to
we
borrow
have two
yours.
friends.
Come on.
You've got one as well, right?
I got one. Yeah.
Oh, we can both borrow one.
No.
Yeah. Take it with you tonight.
No.
Yeah. So, yeah, definitely. Let us know how you guys like to cook your steaks. I'd love to hear all the tips from the viewers. Real quick here, let's chat about some tips. Anyone having like hot like steak cooking tips?
I've got the granddaddy of them all.
The granddaddy. Let's hear it.
Leave it alone.
Preach. Preach.
Put it on there. Your one side. Don't
Oh, you're
touch it.
one side and then the other.
Don't
you
touch
flip
it until don't touch it until you're ready to go to the other side.
I've honestly heard some benefits to like flipping it a lot. You're not a fan?
I've
I'm a
heard
go-
the
I'd-
flip it every 30 seconds after
Listen,
the initial
God.
sear. I don't do that.
listen. If you want to watch someone cook an amazing steak, as much as I know he gets a lot of heat, Gordon Ramsay's video that he does on
He's solid
cooking
guy.
steak is phenomenal, and it's 7-8 minute video that he's got on YouTube. It's amazing.
He doesn't
And
flip it a lot.
He doesn't flip it.
Yeah.
I've actually done it a few times where I didn't flip it at all,
Hmm.
and I covered it,
Okay.
and
No, I don't like that.
you get crust on one side, so you are only getting crust on one side.
Yeah.
But it tasted a little bit different. But he watched that video.
Yeah.
It's
Gordon
Gordon
Ramsay.
Ramsay's. I think it's called Best Steak.
If you put in Gordon Ramsay steak, it'll probably pop.
Yeah,
up.
it'll probably.
What does he get heat
Interesting.
on? Out of curiosity,
What is he? What?
get heat on. I've
Oh,
never
just
heard
his
of a bad
attitude.
Because he's a
recipe.
Hell's
dick.
Kitchen.
I thought you meant
honest-
his food.
But honestly,
Oh, no.
if you watch his videos, like we love watching the kids ones, he is a sweetheart.
He's a great guy.
He is an incredible person.
You get him outside of Hell's Kitchen.
You get
yeah,
him outside
he's
of Hell's
great.
Kitchen. Yeah, he's fantastic. He really is an incredible guy.
Yes.
Yeah, similar. I won't go into all the details, but similar story. He changed the way I cook scrambled eggs. We're talking about steak and eggs. The way he cooks eggs, I started doing that. I will never go back now.
I have a cheater
So look
for
it up.
scrambled eggs. We'll have to do sometime.
I would put this out to the universe that steak and eggs might be the best meal. It might be my last meal. Like if I'm ever in a situation where I get to request a final meal.
Yeah.
Hopefully not.
I hope I'm not, but it might be steak and eggs.
Over easy.
Absolutely. Got to have that.
Yeah.
Stop it up.
Look up a couple cooks or some local chefs here in Indiana, and they do like the best olive oil chive egg I've ever had in my life.
Ooh, that
Look
sounds
up their
good.
recipe. It is to die for. Olive oil chive. Yeah, just like you're basically just basting the egg with olive oil and chives. Oh my gosh! I actually did that with the Wild Game Wednesday.
Oh, sweet.
So if you look at their Outdoor Edge Wild Game Wednesday, like you'll see the couple cooks chive eggs. I utilize that as well. Any other hot tips?
Yeah,
I've got
I'll say
one.
back to-
I'll wrap up with.
Yeah, I would say I would back to. I mean, I second Corey's on leave it alone. I promise you a lot. We've talked about this from throughout the. It's kind of been a theme throughout this episode. A lot of with steak is it's what you're not doing that's going to give you what you want.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, my hot tip is obviously we process a lot of our own meat. So like you've got your back strap, which is a fairly round cut, right? I do like I need to get better at the names of all the steaks. In the hind quarter, is it like the top sirloin, like above like the football shape, little roast? So that one's a little bit flatter, right? Than as compared to the backstrap. Even a backstrap though, like they can be like kind of ovally, like you sit them on the table if they're
Yeah.
not a perfect circle. Grab some butcher's twine and learn how to tie your steak, and you're basically just taking it on. You look at YouTube here. I got my hands. I'm making an oval. Like when that meat is sitting down, like it's an oval shape. When you tie it up with butcher twine, you're basically making it into a circle. Cooks way more even. So no matter, I mean, sous vide, it doesn't matter. Like you could get away with the not doing this, but like if you're putting it on a grill, cast iron, smoker, if it's tied up into a perfect circle, like it's going to be a lot, like just smoother, like front to back, cook
I like
wise.
that.
That's my tip.
I think my last one would be a dabbledilla. I think you can go overboard with your seasonings.
Oh, well.
It doesn't take much for a steak, in my opinion.
There is a line, but like again, yeah, depending on what cut you're choosing to cook
Yeah.
as a steak, I think a lot of people take that the other way and they season far too little.
Yes, There is a fine line. It's a fine line for sure.
I don't know if it's a fine line, but there's definitely a line.
Man, I'm
Yeah.
I'm a salt and butter guy, man.
Yeah.
Maybe some garlic, some rosemary, but
Olive oil, salt, and pepper is like my jam.
Yep.
keep it simple, stupid.
Yeah.
Little kiss.
Yes. But I will argue Andy's Texas dust on some
Oh.
steak. Oh,
That's one
my
you can
lord.
you can just base that bad boy in.
I'm gonna have to try it.
So good.
Oh man.
I used it on my hamburgers and I liked it. So
It'll take your steak up a notch. Guaranteed
It's
to like it.
very hard for
It'll
me to
also
go away
take
from
your
salt and
eggs.
pepper.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
try other things and then I just go right back to
Yeah.
it.
Well, Colton, you've got our recipe for our final recipe
hear
for
it.
the evening here.
Yeah.
What we'll talk real quick seasoning, because this recipe, it's a little different than just like your standard steak, huh?
Yeah. So one of the best ways. So we talk a lot about on this show about just the general staples that people cook and how do we kick those up a notch, right? One of the best ways to do that is to change the sauce that you're presenting with your dish, right? So steak is great on its own, but if you want to mix things up, if you don't want to have the same just grilled steak every night, there's lots of different sauces you can do. Gorgonzola, herb sauces. This chimichurri is more of an herb sauce, but specifically when you get into springtime, right? For those of you that garden or just get fresh stuff from your local store, chimichurri sauce uses a lot of mint. If you don't know what chimichurri is, it's a herb and oil based sauce that goes on your steak, and that mint flavor gives it a very unique taste. And we have a lot of mint in Indiana. It grows like weeds, so it's the perfect thing to do. So yeah, I won't go into cooking the steak because we already did that. So this recipe is really just the chimichurri sauce. But you start out with 1 to 2 garlic cloves minced, 1 cup of parsley, 1 cup of mint, and that's kind of the base. So mix all that together, and then everything else in this recipe you can kind of play with, which is kind of fun. Andy made a sauce. My brain is terrible. I forget how many weeks ago, but a couple weeks ago, I started with the same base as Andy's recipe, which was 1 minced chili pepper, 2 to 3 tablespoons of lime juice, salt and pepper to taste, and half a cup of olive oil. Now, that being said, traditional chimichurri sauces use, instead of the lime juice, they use actually red wine vinegar. I tried it with white wine vinegar. Turned out really good, actually. The acid, I felt like complemented the steak well. But just like Andy talked about, in a previous episode, there's a cheater way to do this. So you can add all these different dried ingredients together and whatnot. But instead of that, there's a seasoning that I found at Costco. It's Spiceology, which I feel like we'll talk about them quite a bit. There's a lot of good seasonings that Spiceology makes. Meat Eater actually partnered with them and makes some with them, but it's called a Greek Freak. So Greek Freak. It's all your basic Greek seasoning. So it's got some sun-dried tomato in there, some oregano, which again, a lot of traditional chimichurri sauces use
oregano.
dried oregano. Wasn't in the recipe that me and Andy used, but it's a great addition. And then some other things. But you basically just chop everything up. And then at the very end, important note here, actually, because Andy,
I messed this up.
Andy, I wouldn't say messed it up.
It
but
still came out good, but it was I was upset with it.
So Andy blended his. A lot of people will say to hand chop everything and slowly mix your olive oil in, because that keeps kind of the what's the word I'm looking for?
Almost the body of the
It keeps a good texture
Right.
and body to it versus just not just dousing your steak with like a salsa. So
It's a great puree that I made. It was
Yeah.
good for dip, but man, it's not. This
And the
doing it
flavor
this
was
way-
phenomenal.
Chunky salsa versus
doing
exactly.
doing it this way is way better.
yeah.
the hand dicing.
The hand dicing,
Hand dicing, and then kind of slowly stirring your olive oil in and just incorporating it. And then some people will serve it right away. Hot tip, let it marinate in your fridge for at least an hour. And it'll let all those flavors kind of meld together. That way you're not just, getting a bunch of incohesive flavors. Every bite kind of has the taste. It's kind of like chili. Chili.
Nice.
We talked about this previously too, but chili's always better the next day.
gotta meld.
Absolutely, yep.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Dude, I love it. Yeah, I've also never tried like a chimichurri, so I'm dying to
It was
Get
kind
Back
of
up.
blew my mind a little bit.
I've tasted it, but I've never made one. So
Yeah.
I need to get
I
that.
definitely want to make one for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it, if you make chimichurri and you try it and you don't love it, wait until you try it with the meat
Mm-hmm.
because
Or just wait till the next day. and
yeah,
try it.
exactly.
Well, we
exactly.
tried
Like you just
Andy's with some of your sourdough.
Mm.
Even I loved
Yes.
it. I thought it was awesome.
I actually put the leftover on eggs too.
Yeah.
Ooh, yes.
Yes.
Okay.
There you go. Back to eggs. Steak and eggs.
Steak and
It's
eggs.
the best meal.
Steak, eggs, and chimichurri.
There you
Could be really
Next
good.
level.
Yeah.
Yes. All right. Well, thank you all for tuning in. Let us know. We honestly didn't get to it this episode. It was in my notes to talk about, and we just ran out of time. But I would love to hear how you reheat steak. So write in, tell us. You made a steak. You didn't eat all of it. How do you reheat that? How do you best use that steak? Because I've tried a bunch of different ways, and I don't think I've mastered reheating steak. So tell us how you do that.
I
Give
never
us-
had that problem.
Corey just finishes all of it. He never has none of
Just
it.
eat it all, and it's not your problem.
Yes. Thank you so much for tuning in. Please leave us a review. Tell us how we're doing. If you need to get in touch with us, hello@okayestcook.com or just our names at okayestcook.com. We would love to hear from you. Find us on all the socials and tell us what we're doing right. Tell us what we're doing wrong. And send us your recipes. Please. Yeah.
Yeah,
Like we're
please.
dying for more recipes. We'd love
Love
to
to
share.
showcase- yeah, showcase
We'd love
them
to
a little
share
bit.
your recipes. So write them in, send them to us, and we'll talk about you on the podcast. Until next time.